Everyone at that wedding thought I lost my mind. The maid smashing the bride's face into the cake in front of 200 guests, but nobody knew what I knew. That cake wasn't just dessert, it was a murder weapon, and I wasn't attacking her. I was saving a man's life. If you're new here, welcome. I tell true, raw stories about real life, about the things that happen behind closed doors in rich houses, where people like me are supposed to stay quiet and invisible. Before we start, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because trust me, you don't want to miss where this story ends. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I saw and what I did about it. For 8 years, I worked as a housemaid in one of the biggest mansions you could imagine. Marble floors so clean you could see your own face in them. Chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. And a man who owned it all, a billionaire, a good man, tired eyes, kind heart, the kind of man who built an empire with his own two hands and forgot to build a life for himself along the way. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't cold. He was just busy, always somewhere between meetings and airports and phone calls that never seemed to end. And in that big empty house, I became more than just a maid. I cooked his meals. I kept his secrets. I watched him grow older, watched the loneliness sit on his shoulders like a heavy coat he never took off. So when he came home one evening with a smile on his face, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in years, I was happy for him. He told me he was getting married. Her name doesn't matter either, not to me, not anymore. What matters is what she was, underneath all that beauty and all that charm. She was stunning, I won't lie about that. The kind of woman who walked into a room and every eye followed her. She had a laugh that sounded like music and words that felt like warm honey. Around him, she was perfect. Soft voice, gentle hands, always touching his arm, always looking at him like he was the only man in the world. But around me, she was someone else completely. The first time we were alone in the kitchen, she looked at me like I was furniture. She didn't say good morning. She didn't say thank you when I brought her tea. She just handed me her coat and walked past me like I wasn't even there. I told myself maybe she's just nervous, maybe she's not used to a house this big, maybe she'll warm up. She never did. Weeks turned into months, and I started to see cracks in the mask she wore so well. One day I heard her on the phone in the garden, her voice sharp and cold, nothing like the sweetness she used with him. She was talking about numbers, about accounts, about something she called the timeline. I didn't think much of it then. Rich people talk about money all the time. It's their favorite language, but there was one night I'll never forget. I was walking past her room to collect the laundry, and I heard her voice through the door, low and tight, almost like a hiss. She was on the phone again, and I heard her say something that made my whole body go still. She said, once we're married, everything changes. He signs the new documents right after the wedding, then it's only a matter of time before I don't need him anymore. I stood there in that hallway, heart pounding, telling myself I misheard her. Maybe she meant something else. Maybe I was imagining things. Rich people plan for their futures too, right? But something in her voice, something cold and sharp, stayed with me long after I walked away. I wanted to say something. God knows I wanted to, but who was I, just the maid? If I walked up to a billionaire and told him his beautiful fiancée sounded like she was planning something dangerous, who do you think he would believe? Her with her soft hands and sweet smile, or me, the woman who cleaned his floors? I had a daughter to raise on my own. This job wasn't just a job, it was survival. It paid for her school, her clothes, her future. I couldn't risk losing it over a feeling, over a phone call I might have misunderstood. So I did what people like me learn to do. I stayed quiet, I watched, I waited. As the wedding got closer, the house turned into chaos, flowers everywhere, caterers running in and out, designers fitting dresses, decorators arguing about lighting. In the middle of all that noise, I kept my eyes open. I noticed things nobody else seemed to notice. His mother, an elegant older woman with sharp eyes and even sharper instincts, never liked the fiancé from the very beginning. She used to say there was something off about her, something behind those pretty eyes that didn't sit right. Mothers have a sense for these things, I think. They see what love makes their sons blind to. One afternoon, his mother fell terribly ill after drinking tea in that very house. The doctors called it food poisoning. Everyone accepted that explanation and moved on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't an accident. I remembered seeing the fiancée in the kitchen that morning alone, near the counter where the tea trays were prepared. She wasn't supposed to be in there. She never went near the kitchen, not once in all those months. I told myself I was being paranoid. Grief and suspicion can make you see shadows where there's only light. But my gut, the same gut that had kept me safe my whole life, told me something was very wrong in that house. The wedding day finally arrived and it was beautiful, almost unbearably so. White flowers climbed every wall. Soft music floated through the air. Guests in designer suits and gowns filled the mansion, laughing, drinking champagne, admiring the love story they thought they were witnessing. And in the middle of the ballroom stood the cake, 5 tiers tall, white as snow, decorated with delicate sugar flowers that looked almost too perfect to eat. I was in the kitchen most of that morning, helping the catering staff, making sure everything ran smoothly. That's when I saw her slip away from the crowd of guests and walk quietly toward the pantry, where the final touches on the cake were being made. She thought no one was watching. She thought the kitchen staff were too busy to notice one more person walking through. But I noticed. I followed her at a distance, staying behind the shelves, my heart hammering in my chest, and that's when I saw it. She pulled a small vial from her purse, her hands steady, practiced like she had done this before. She poured its contents onto one specific slice of cake, the one already set aside on a separate plate, decorated slightly differently from the rest. A slice meant only for him, the groom, her soon-to-be husband. My blood ran cold. In that moment, every strange phone call, every cold stare, every unexplained illness in that house made terrible, horrifying sense. She wasn't marrying him for love, she never was. She was marrying him for what would come after, for the money, the empire, the freedom that would come once he was gone. And today, on their wedding day, she was going to make sure that freedom came quickly. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run and tell anyone, what I had just seen. But who would believe me? The maid, accusing the bride of poisoning her own husband's cake on their wedding day with 200 guests watching. I would be thrown out before I even finished the sentence. And by the time anyone believed me, it might already be too late. So I made a decision in that kitchen, a decision that would change everything. I decided I wouldn't ask for permission. I wouldn't wait for someone in power to believe me. I would stop this myself, right there, right then, no matter what it cost me. I walked out of that kitchen and into the ballroom, my hands trembling, my mind racing, watching the clock the way you watch a fuse burning towards something you can't stop any other way. The ceremony was already finished. Vows were spoken, rings were exchanged. Now it was time for the cake, the sweet ending to what everyone believed was a perfect love story. They stood together at the table, hand in hand, smiling for the cameras. The photographer counted down. Guests raised their glasses, and there, right beside the cake, sat that one slice, already cut, already plated, already poisoned, waiting to be placed into his hands. I couldn't wait another second. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the gasps and the stares, ignoring every rule I had followed for 8 long years about staying invisible, about knowing my place. None of that mattered anymore. A man's life mattered. I reached the table just as she picked up that plate, just as she turned toward him with a smile so sweet it could have fooled anyone in the world. And I grabbed her. I grabbed the back of her head and I pushed her face straight down into that cake, the real cake, the one meant for everyone else, sending white frosting and sugar flowers flying across the table. The room went completely silent for one heartbeat, then erupted into chaos. Screams, gasps, someone dropped a glass, security rushed toward me from every direction, grabbing my arms, pulling me back. That cake is poisoned. I screamed loud enough for the entire room to hear. The slice on that plate, test it, she poisoned it, she's trying to kill him. Nobody moved at first. They just stared at me like I had truly lost my mind, the crazy maid who ruined a billionaire's wedding. Security dragged me toward the door, my feet barely touching the ground, my voice growing hoarse from screaming the truth into a room full of people who didn't want to hear it. But he heard me. He stood there frozen, frosting still dripping from his new bride's face, and something in my voice, something in the desperation of it, made him stop the security guards with a single raised hand. "Wait," he said, his voice shaking. "Let her go, bring me that plate." The room fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of fear, of realization slowly creeping in. He walked over to that separate plate, the one his new bride had prepared with her own hands, the one meant just for him. He looked at it for a long moment, then looked at her, still frozen, frosting sliding down her face, her eyes wide with something I recognized instantly. Panic. He called for his personal doctor, who was thankfully a guest at the wedding. The doctor took one look at the residue on that plate and immediately requested it be tested. Within an hour, police arrived, and what they found confirmed every fear I had carried alone for months. That slice of cake contained a substance strong enough to stop a grown man's heart within hours, slow enough to look like a tragic, unexplained medical event, fast enough that by the time anyone suspected foul play, she would already be a grieving widow with access to everything he owned. They found more evidence after that. Messages on her phone to someone helping her plan it all. Documents showing she had researched his will, his insurance policies, exactly how much she would inherit and how quickly. She hadn't just planned to marry him. She had planned to bury him, all within the same year, all while wearing that white dress and playing the role of the perfect, loving wife. She was arrested right there in the ballroom, still in her wedding gown, cake still dripping from her chin, as guests who had been drinking champagne to her happiness just moments before now watched in horror as officers led her away in handcuffs. He came to find me afterward, in the small room where security had taken me, probably expecting to fire me to punish me for the scene I had caused. Instead, he stood in that doorway for a long time, just looking at me, his eyes red, his hands still trembling. Then he said something I will never forget as long as I live. He said, "You saved my life, and I almost let them drag you out the door for it." I don't think I said anything back, I don't think I could. 8 years of being invisible, 8 years of staying quiet, of knowing my place, all of it broke open in that one moment, and I finally let myself cry, right there in front of the man I had protected without him even knowing it. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. He told the truth to the press himself, refusing to let anyone twist the story into something ugly about me. He made sure the world knew that his maid, the woman everyone had been ready to blame, was the only reason he was still alive to tell this story at all. He didn't just thank me with words, he changed my entire life. My daughter's school was paid for fully through university. He gave me a home of my own, something I never thought I would have. And more than that, he gave me something money can't buy. He gave me respect, real respect, the kind that sees you, that hears you, that finally believes you. Looking back now, I think about all the years I spent staying quiet, staying small, believing that people like me weren't allowed to speak up in houses like that. I think about how close I came to staying silent that day too, to letting fear win, to telling myself it wasn't my place to interfere. But something in me refused to let another person die just so I could keep playing it safe. I learned something that day I will never forget. Being underestimated isn't the same as being powerless. Sometimes the people the world overlooks are the very ones paying the closest attention. Sometimes the quiet ones in the corner of the room see everything, while everyone else is too blinded by beauty, by charm, by lies dressed up in white lace, to notice the truth standing right in front of them. I wasn't a hero that day. I was just a woman who refused to stay silent when a life was on the line. And if I had to do it all again, face those 200 guests, that security, that fear of losing everything, I would do it again in a heartbeat. If this story moved you the way it moved me to tell it, let me know in the comments. Tell me, would you have done the same thing in my place? Would you have risked everything to speak the truth? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more real stories like this one, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that your voice matters, no matter how small the world tries to make you feel. I'll see you in the next story.